Billionaire uncovers amazing truth after discovering 7-year-old girl battling his dog for food. Reynolds, a titan of industry, strolled through his expansive estate, the silence of wealth wrapping around him like a plush cashmere blanket. After a long day of unrelenting board meetings, where money was the god and quarterly earnings its faithful disciples, he expected solitude to soothe him. But it was behind his mansion, a place he rarely visited, that he found an unexpected confrontation. His Great Dane, Duke, engaged in a curious tug-of-war with a scrappy little girl Lily who couldn't be more than 7. Her dirt-stained clothes contrasted sharply with the manicured lawns of his prestigious neighborhood. Mark's instinct urged him to step in, to separate his loyal dog from the girl. But the sight of her tenacity, a tiny figure fiercely defending her bruised bag of food, stirred something deep within him. Compelled by an unfamiliar flicker of compassion, he hesitated. What was it that drew him towards this scene? Nostalgia? A pang of guilt? Beneath the surfaces of his steely billionaire facade, emotions churned, tangled in a web of rumination. He approached, mulling over the distance he had kept from human connection. The boardroom's echoes were distant, drowned out by the realization that while he built an empire of idolatry and ambition, people like Lily faced everyday battles against hunger. Introducing himself felt awkward but necessary. As she shared her truth, a single mother grappling with 2 jobs, a child pushed to fend for herself, Mark's heart sank under the weight of this revelation. Days passed, and Mark found it nearly impossible to ignore the wave of guilt crashing against the sturdy walls of his fortress. He left groceries anonymously, trying to avoid the complexities of acknowledgement while still feeling the gnawing need to help. Yet, whispers of eviction pressed against him like a vice. He felt the tremors of a moral dilemma. How could he persist in his capitalist ideals when the true reality of many, including Lily, lay bare before him? Each night was a sleepless battle waged against racing thoughts and the pulsing weight of his privilege. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Mark could feel the ground shifting beneath him as he dredged deeper into Lily's reality, one that mirrored his own childhood struggles. The ghost of his late parents urged him to act, to push against the ingrained system that perpetuated the kind of inequality that starved small girls in the shadows of opulence. His power twisted in his hands like a double-edged sword. The stories of lost opportunities gnawed at him, and he realized the path of social responsibility called with a siren's song. Would his newfound relationship lead him toward redemption or enmesh him in a desperate struggle he never signed up for? The stakes escalated as the truth about Lily's mother began to creep out, shrouded in secrets that threatened to unravel everything he thought he understood. A shocking reality loomed, one that could plunge both of their lives into chaos. Mark stood at the precipice, grappling with the question echoing through his mind: what does it truly mean to be wealthy in a world filled with so much need? The chasm within him widened, and he feared he was on the brink of a truth he could not escape. Mark's internal landscape shifted with every passing day, the cracks in his emotional armor deepening as he confronted the glaring contradiction between his success and the plight of Lily and her mother. Sitting behind the desk in his opulent office, the skyline sprawled before him, he felt increasingly confined within the glass walls that once felt empowering. Each document he reviewed was monotonous, numbers and charts swimming before his eyes, but his thoughts resided far beyond those figures. He began to embrace a sense of urgency. What if he could do more than provide groceries? What if he could establish a framework that offered not just temporary relief but systems for sustainable growth? Ideas unshackled from his corporate identity surged through his mind. In a ruthless business world, he had learned to architect monopolies and leverage fortunes, but could that same ingenuity be applied to someone else's gain? Mark initiated a bold pivot, seated at the intersection of heart and intellect. He delved into the mechanics of charitable foundations, networking with experts in social enterprise, all while continuing to monitor Lily's precarious home situation from a distance. It was one thing to feel a burden for their suffering, it was another to confront the possible consequences of his actions. The ethical murmurings intensified within him, demanding resolution, as he balanced the desire to protect his wealth and the call of his conscience. Approaching Lily's mother, Patricia, became inevitable, yet shrouded in trepidation. He envisioned various scenarios, rehearsing dialogue in the shower as he scrubbed off the grime of privilege. How would he present himself? Would acknowledgement of his wealth dispel sincerity, or could he leverage it for good? Each consideration transformed into a complex tangle, illustrating the challenges lying ahead. One morning, while the sun broke loosening shadows across the chateau, he slipped into his car with resolute purpose, the engine rumbling under his command. Pathways unfurled like a monumental decision, directing him toward the small, run-down apartment building where Lily lived. He remembered every detail of her story, feeling her struggles as keenly as the air filling his lungs. Perhaps she'd see him not as the billionaire, but as someone genuine, someone willing to invest in her future. The car shattered the silence of his domain, driving away from the familiar comfort of greed. As he parked nearby, he gazed at the building. The peeling paint and broken steps were stark reminders of the lives entrenched in poverty. Staring at the door felt like peering into Pandora's box. Would this act of generosity open a world of gratitude or unleash chaos? With a controlled breath, he exited the vehicle and walked towards the door that represented so much more than just a physical barrier. He had spent years learning to traverse corporate obstacles, now he faced a different challenge, one rooted not in profit margins but human elements. With determination beating like a war drum in his chest, he raised his hand and knocked, fully aware that he was on the brink of something transformative, yet fraught with undeniable repercussions. The moment he took to exit his prescribed role and step into human vulnerability was about to unfold. What awaited him on the other side of that door could alter everything, not just for Lily and her mother, but for the very core of who he thought he was. As he prepared to face the woman whose life was tethered to a harsh reality, a familiar question echoed in his consciousness: would this moment reinforce his wealth or reveal a richness he had never known? The door creaked open, and the air that passed through was thick with the scent of unwashed clothes and stale food. Mark stood on the threshold, his heart racing, struggling to couple the gravity of his decision with the reality unfolding before him. He was struck by the unassuming charm of the cramped apartment, it held the weight of lives being lived in muted desperation. Every detail appeared amplified, not unlike a spotlight revealing the imperfections he had turned a blind eye to over the years. "Can I help you?" Patricia's voice broke the silence, tentative but edged with a strength born of necessity. She stood before him, a frail woman with weariness etched deep into her features, a maternal shield surrounding her daughter's fragile spirit. Mark cleared his throat, wishing he had orchestrated a more graceful entrance. My name is Mark. I'm here about Lily." For a fraction of a moment, he thought he saw a flash of recognition in her eyes, a flicker of interest mixed with suspicion. The internal debate he envisioned before arriving surged to the forefront. Did he really deserve a warm reception? Should he lean on his wealth to smooth over the tension between them? What about her? Patricia's body stiffened slightly, an instinctual defense mechanism kicking in. "I've been hearing things. I want to help." The statement hung in the air, precariously balanced. Her brow furrowed, and a veil of distrust cloaked her. "What does that mean to you?" "Help?" Mark hesitated. He recognized this as a pivotal moment, he needed to be transparent, to connect. "I've thought a lot about my role in the world, about what it means to be successful. I want to apply what I've learned, strategies I've used to build and grow businesses, to create something meaningful for people like you." Patricia held his gaze with an intensity that threatened to unnerve him. He could see the gears turning behind her eyes. Could he be trusted, or was he just another wealthy outsider playing at philanthropy? Reflecting on his life, Mark felt a disappointment loom over him. All the maneuvers and tactics he had perfecting to conquer the business world weren't yielding the innocent gratitude he craved now. Instead, he faced something raw and existential. "I can't just let you in," she said finally, the shield of protection remaining intact. "Why you? What do you want?" The challenge refined him. It was time to dig deeper into his resolve, to shed the corporate trappings that had molded his persona. "I want to understand. I want to help create opportunities, not just cover needs for today. If I'm going to offer anything, I want it to be lasting. I have to believe that I can provide more than just money." Something softened in Patricia's demeanor, a glimmer of curiosity. "Stop talking in terms of business. I want to know, who are you really?" "Just a man who realized he doesn't want to just fill his pockets," he admitted, his voice steady as he took a step closer, hoping to bridge the emotional gap. "I was lost in my own world, and it took seeing Lily's situation to wake me up." Patricia studied him, gauging whether his sincerity matched his privilege. "Okay," she relented, a cautious truce forming. "But you need to understand that trust takes time." Mark felt a swell of hope. This moment, perhaps, marked the beginning of his true journey. The conversation opened a pathway to experiences he had long avoided, forcing him to confront fears embedded deep within him. As he walked through the threshold into the dimly lit living room, eyes fell on scattered toys and worn furniture, symbols of resilience standing against the tide of hardship. He was fully aware that every word from here on would carry the weight of expectation, teaching him lessons far removed from the boardroom. The time had come to face not only Lily's and Patricia's challenges, but also the shadows of his own past, the false narratives that wealth had woven around his identity. Here in this cramped sanctuary, changes were brewing, and he felt the lurking questions beckon with urgency. How could he dismantle the barriers he built? What new truths were waiting to be unveiled? The answers he sought awaited him, entangled alongside the lives of two remarkable women. Each moment would demand recalibration of his understanding of success, each word a step towards the man he needed to become. Mark felt a mixture of relief and anxiety as he settled into the weathered couch that sagged beneath him. The air hung heavy, mingling with the bittersweet sting of neglect and hope. He couldn't ignore the dissonance between the life he had and the fragility unfolding before his eyes. It was a landscape where he had previously only brushed against the surface, and now, every moment was a revelation, urging him to dig deeper. "Can you tell me about Lily?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with emotion. He needed to distance himself from the corporate jargon that had shaped his past. The warmth he sought could only blossom from authenticity. Patricia regarded him a moment longer, her walls crumbling just enough to allow her to speak. "She's a fighter," came the quiet ripple of her voice, rich with maternal pride yet laced with exhaustion. "But the world makes it hard for her. I'm doing everything I can, but it's not enough." Each word shaped the emerging reality, exposing the raw vulnerability beneath her stern facade. Mark felt a sad familiarity, the fear that swelled within him when confronted with challenges, his own self-imposed distance from life's struggles. "What if I could help you both?" The words slipped from his mouth before he could second-guess himself. Patricia's features hardened again, a shield returning as her mind raced. "Help sounds good, but words are just that, words. What do you actually want?" Mark paused. He saw in her resolve a reflection of himself, standing at the intersection of ambition and moral choice. "I want to help you break out of this cycle. But I'm not talking about charity. I want to understand your challenges first. The real issues, not just the symptoms." As he spoke, he felt a shift within himself, like a tectonic plate gradually adjusting its position. He was abandoning the transactional mindset that had ruled him. It was a small yet significant moment of clarity, and he sensed that Patricia recognized it too. "Okay," she said, her guard softening near the edges. "It's about the rent, yes, but it's also about Lily's health. She needs support from the school, food security, a safe place to play. Those are basics that I'm crawling to secure." These new dimensions illuminated the dark corridors of Mark's ignorance. He thought about the countless strategies he had employed to achieve financial success and realized they meant little in this context. There were no immediate solutions, only the arduous task of building trust, layer by layer. "I can connect you with resources," he offered hesitantly, "but I want you involved in choosing what's best for both of you." Patricia scrutinized him, her trust still frail. "And what do you get from this?" "You can go back to your comfortable life and forget about us." The accusation struck a chord deep within him. "I get to feel that I'm actually doing something meaningful and not just accumulating wealth for wealth's sake. It's time I give back in a real way, not out of obligation, but because I want to." Patricia sighed heavily, conflicted by the sincerity in his voice. A moment of silence enveloped them, filled only with the rustling of memories and dreams yet to unfold. "Trust is earned," she finally responded. "So if you want to get involved, lift this family up with us. Help without strings." Mark nodded, a sense of purpose igniting within him. This was the beginning of something more than community engagement, it was a reckoning for him. He recognized that the journey ahead wasn't just about helping others but about peeling back the layers of his own identity. The corporate leader striving for respect was being stripped away by the truth of shared human experience. As he exchanged tentative smiles with Patricia, he was struck by a revelation deep within. He didn't just want to help, he longed to understand the very essence of connectivity, the fabric of lives intertwined by hardship and perseverance. Each conversation was an opportunity to learn, each challenge a lesson to embrace. This metamorphosis demanded more than gestures, it demanded vulnerability. The air felt electrified with possibility, yet the road ahead was strewn with uncertainties. What would be his next step? How would he begin to challenge the systems that bolstered inequality? The answers lingered just beyond reach, beckoning with the promise of transformation. But the urgency clung to him, and with each heartbeat, the truth arose more insistently. This was only the beginning. What awaited him around the bend would test not only his resolve to help Patricia and Lily but also his fundamental understanding of his own existence. Determined yet apprehensive, Mark stepped back into the unfolding landscape, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Mark found himself wrestling with a whirlwind of thoughts as he stepped back onto the neighborhood streets. Each stride felt heavier than the last, like he was carrying the weight of a decision that would change everything. He was no longer the man who thrived on bottom lines and quarterly reports. A new, unfamiliar identity bubbled to the surface, one that craved purpose beyond profit. He embraced the chilly air, each breath a reminder of the reality he sought to change. With each passing moment, the stark contrast between his comfortable existence and the world he had just glimpsed echoed in his mind. Patricia's frank discussion about Lily's needs reverberated through him, challenging his long-held beliefs about success and happiness. Could he truly make a difference? The well-worn platitudes of self-help books flickered through his thoughts, but now they felt like hollow echoes. He needed a genuine plan, one imbued with honesty and empathy, an approach shaped by understanding rather than strategic manipulation. A chance meeting with a community organizer later that afternoon altered his trajectory. Mark had sensed a burgeoning urgency within him that demanded expression. He found himself in a modest cafe, sitting across from Anna, a passionate activist whose fervor lit up the room. He laid out his thoughts cautiously, reflecting on Patricia and Lily's struggles. Anna listened intently, her sharp eyes piercing through his socially conditioned veneers. "You face the dual challenge of breaking down systemic barriers while also rebuilding trust," she said, her voice steady. "But know this, Mark, true change isn't born of obligation. It comes from standing shoulder to shoulder with those you hope to uplift." Her words cut deep, reverberating in his consciousness. He had spent years climbing to the top of the corporate ladder, thinking he would find fulfillment, only to realize he had deserted the essence of connection. The facade of success loomed like a specter. The very systems he once championed now felt like a prison. The meeting sparked a fire within Mark, igniting both actionable ideas and deeper questions. He began mapping out a plan to engage with local schools, food banks, and health services, avenues through which he could forge connections between available resources and families like Patricia's. No longer blinded by profit margins, he sought to understand how to implement a holistic approach to family support. As he returned to the neighborhood, determination coursing through his veins, he felt more equipped to confront the complexities surrounding poverty and health. His previously polished corporate presence was shedding away, replaced by someone willing to get their hands dirty. Gradually, he understood that real work required immersing himself in the trenches, where shadows of struggle often lingered. Yet, self-doubt crept in like a thief in the night. Was he merely a privileged outsider meddling in a world he could never fully grasp? Would the community even welcome him? Each interaction felt like a test of his authenticity. These questions clashed with his desire to understand, propelling him into a spiral of contemplation. His first steps involved meeting directly with families to hear their stories, not only to offer solutions but to engage in meaningful dialogue. However, the specter of his former life loomed large, whispering fears of weakness and inadequacy. The prospect of facing judgment from those he aimed to assist haunted him. What if they saw him as just another affluent individual looking to feel good about himself? Arriving back at Patricia's apartment complex, Mark hesitated. The neighborhood now seemed tangible, filled with the laughter of children playing and the distant strains of music. He had embraced a pathway, yet apprehension coiled tightly around his heart. Could this nascent connection burgeon into trust? Mark inhaled deeply, reminding himself that the journey of helping others began with stepping into their reality, willing to listen, to feel, and to embrace discomfort. As he knocked on Patricia's door, he felt a surge of determination surmounting the trepidation. The door creaked open, and as Patricia's gaze met his, Mark understood that the true test was just beginning. But would he be able to confront the structures that perpetuated the cycle of poverty, or would he retreat to his comforts instead? Each moment surged with potential, and a new layer of uncertainty wrapped around his growing resolve. Mark stepped into Patricia's home, the modest surroundings contrasting sharply with his previous life. The scent of simmering stew wafted in the air, wrapping around him like an embrace from a world he had been distant from for too long. He observed the walls adorned with drawings, the vibrant colors a testament to youthful imagination and resilience. As Patricia welcomed him with cautious warmth, he felt a pulse of anxiety mixed with determined purpose. "Hi, Mark. I wasn't sure you'd come back," she admitted, gesturing for him to take a seat at the small kitchen table. "Neither was I," he replied, forcing a smile while his insides churned with uncertainty. He grappled with the need to be genuine, to peel back the layers of privilege that had long shielded him. Every instinct urged him to maintain his polished facade, but the moment called for authenticity, something he was still learning to navigate. "How's Lily doing?" he asked, trying to ground the conversation in the personal connection that had sparked his resolve to return. "Better," Patricia replied, a flicker of hope brightening her expression. "We've been working on her reading. It's slow going, but we're getting there. She's excited about it." The warmth in her voice jogged something in Mark's memory, a sensation of purpose he had long thought forgotten. But even as he engaged with Patricia, doubt stirred within him. Could a few good conversations truly lead to meaningful change? He felt the weight of his corporate background creeping back, whispering about the inadequacy of purpose over profit. As he began to ask deeper questions about her experiences, he noticed Patricia nodding, her posture shifting into a more relaxed stance. He sensed her hesitance melting under his genuine interest, yet invisible barriers still loomed between them. He had to break through. There were stories to be told, realities to face. "What challenges do you face every day?" Mark inquired, striving for impact without overstepping. Patricia's expression shifted, shadows flitting across her face. "It's tough, Mark. I'm constantly worried about not having enough, about how to keep Lily healthy and happy while juggling deadlines, bills, and a landlord who has little patience for late rent." Her words hung heavily in the air, instilling a sense of urgency within Mark. The statistics he had once viewed from afar now took on a breath of life, each number a story, each metric a human being burdened by an overwhelming structure. Determined to dig deeper, he probed, "What do you think we could do together to make a difference?" Patricia paused, searching his eyes for sincerity. "You mean, like help?" "Many have tried, but it often feels like just another feather in their cap. I need something real, something sustained." In that moment, Mark realized he had to be vulnerable, acknowledging his privilege and willingness to learn. I'm still figuring out how to navigate all of this. I can't pretend I understand your life completely, but I want to try. I want to know what impact looks like. Not just as an idea but in practical terms. Patricia's gaze softened, and for the first time, he detected a hint of belief stirring in her demeanor. That's a start, I guess. Just know that trust isn't given lightly in these parts. The weight of her words reverberated in Mark's mind, revealing a hidden truth about fostering genuine relationships. Trust takes time and consistent action. He left the apartment that day with a sense of renewed direction, a map of challenges sketched out in his thoughts. The stark realization emerged: he would need to confront not only the emotional barriers but also the systems that had cultivated such disparity. Not just one visit or conversation, but sustained effort over months, or even years. As he walked back down the streets lined with laughter and hardship, a flicker of a plan began to form in his mind. He started questioning what sustainable support would actually look like, how to leverage his resources without falling back into the trap of wanting accolades. But lurking beneath his renewed conviction were doubts. How could he tackle the very systems he once served? Would his willingness alone be enough? With his heart heavy yet hopeful, Mark felt compelled to seek out small, actionable paths forward. Yet, beneath that determination, the specter of his own limitations loomed larger than ever. He was unprepared for the views he might encounter in his next discussions. Would he be equipped to challenge the structures that upheld inequity? With each step, he prepared for the complex journey ahead, one that would test the very essence of his character and intent. As the sun dipped below the horizon, darkening the landscape around him, he whispered into the growing dusk, the time had come to face the uncomfortable truths. What would he uncover during this unwavering pursuit of connection? The morning sun filtered through the small windows of Mark's apartment in the city, casting soft light upon the cluttered stacks of files and reports. He sat at his desk, each document a lingering reminder of his life in the corporate world he had left behind. As he sipped his coffee, the taste was bitter but invigorating, mirroring his current state. He felt an urgent pull to dive deeper into the realities Patricia had shared, yet hesitation seeped into his resolve. What would he even do next? Part of him wanted to reach out to other familiar faces, people of influence and power who could help him implement change, but was that integrity, or merely a desire to curate his own narrative of being a savior? The question circled endlessly, becoming a mantra that drowned out his initial motivations. In search of clarity, Mark resolved to take a step back and explore the communities in the area by visiting local schools. They were not places from which he had ever sought insight. He needed to shed the preconceived notions that his wealth and connections could solve problems single-handedly. He wanted to show he was willing to listen, not just impose. As he entered the local elementary school the following afternoon, the pleasantly chaotic atmosphere disoriented him momentarily. Children ran past, laughter echoing off the walls. A familiar sensation washed over him: embarrassment, realizing he had known so little about lives outside his own insulated bubble. He was directed to a classroom where a teacher, Ms. Darnell, welcomed him with a warm yet skeptical smile. It was plain she had seen her share of philanthropic faces that made promises they never fulfilled. He felt caught in the spotlight of her expectations, aware he had to prove his sincerity. "Why are you really here, Mark?" she asked, her voice cautious yet probing. "I want to understand how I might truly help," he replied, searching her gaze for signs of trust. "It has become clear to me that there is a distance between the resources I have and the realities many face every day." She studied him for a moment longer before inviting him to sit in on a reading session with some of the students. Just as he began to engage with the children, he found his heart cracking open. These kids were vibrant, full of life, and yet he could see the lingering apprehension in their eyes, so much like Patricia's. Their excitement to read, however, shone through, and he admired their resilience in an environment that rarely recognized it. Following the readings, Mark stayed behind to speak with Ms. Darnell. She explained the various challenges she faced, and he listened intently, taking notes on paper scraps. Each narrative was a jolt into actionable understanding. He scribbled down potential programs they could advocate for mentorship opportunities, tutoring resources, food and supplies. But with every idea, doubt clouded his enthusiasm. Would his efforts be seen as an imposition? Could he bear their scrutiny if his plans faltered? Realizing he needed to gain more than just facts, he asked Ms. Darnell for insights on how they might approach the community directly, rather than as distant benefactors. Gathering their insights might cultivate genuine relationships, he suggested carefully, hoping she would recognize his intentions. As she nodded, a flicker of hope sparked in Mark's chest. Perhaps he did have something to offer, something more than just money. Perhaps understanding, time, and respect for their voices could serve as the bridge he was seeking to build. That night, he returned home feeling visibly charged, but simultaneously burdened. How would he navigate the broader community's skepticism? How could he remain authentic in a role that felt inherently clouded by his background? Deep questions swirled within him, and he recognized that his journey was just beginning. Yet, he knew strides had to be taken. He was ready to risk vulnerability, even at the possibility of failure, because he had learned that without stepping into discomfort, true growth would remain out of reach. With determination coursing through him, he vowed to explore this path one conversation and friendship at a time. As he lay his head down to sleep, one thought echoed louder than the rest: what unforeseen truths would his next encounter unravel? The following morning, Mark awoke with the sound of laughter filtering through his window, a stark reminder of the children he'd encountered the previous day. Their brightness lingered in his mind, along with the heaviness of uncertainty that still clung to him. Determined to push forward, he decided to meet Ms. Darnell once more, this time equipped with a fresh resolve. He arrived at the school, heart racing, aware that his previous interactions had merely scratched the surface. He was there to learn, yes, but also to challenge himself in a way he had never embraced, confronting his assumptions head-on. In his mind, he began playing out scenarios of how the day might unfold. What stories might these children share that would further broaden his understanding? As he stepped into the classroom, the chaos immediately enveloped him, a reality where laughter collided with the mundane struggles of childhood. Ms. Darnell greeted him, her expression a mix of warmth and caution. Today, she had brought along a guest, a small girl with bright eyes and even brighter shoes, sitting quietly among her peers. "Mark, this is Lila," Ms. Darnell said, gesturing towards the girl. "She might have something to say about your questions from yesterday." Mark knelt down to Lila's level and introduced himself, struck by the depth of her gaze. "Hi Lila, how do you feel about reading?" he asked, genuinely curious. Lila's face lit up. "I love stories. They take me to places far away. Sometimes I forget things like when I'm hungry." The casual mention of hunger struck a chord in Mark's chest. "What do you mean?" he pressed gently, sensing the gravity behind the simplicity of her words. She looked up, a slight hitch in her voice. "Sometimes, I don't have food at home. I can eat at school, but sometimes it's not enough." A lump formed in Mark's throat. The realization struck him here was a direct window to the stark realities that he had been shielded from for too long. He nodded, trying to mask his discomfort. Lila's resilience was almost unfathomable, yet there she was, courageous and bare. Mark turned to Ms. Darnell. "This must be a common issue," he began, reveling in the weight of his awareness now pressing against him. "More than you know, Mark," she said, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "Food insecurity is an everyday battle for many children around here. Resources are limited, and I'm often faced with a choice between teaching and providing basic needs." He grasped the notepad in his hand, feeling urgency race through him. Building programs was essential, he knew, but this moment filled with raw honesty demanded more than pragmatic solutions. It demanded connection, support, and an immediate response. As Lila shared her dreams of becoming an astronaut, Mark began to formulate a plan. He envisioned a partnership that not only addressed immediate hunger but fostered space for kids to explore aspirations beyond their environment. Lila's story, interwoven with facts Ms. Darnell had provided, fueled his intention to act. But as he quickly jotted down ideas, a new question gripped him: how could he ensure these initiatives genuinely addressed the community's needs without losing their meanings in bureaucratic layers? He couldn't simply throw money at problems, he needed to cultivate relationships, build trust. After the lesson, Mark reached out to Lila. "Would you like to help me think of ways to make sure every kid has enough to eat?" Her eyes widened, a spark igniting within. "Really? I can help." "Yes. Your ideas are important," he assured her, feeling the momentum building between them. That evening, Mark returned home, a clearer sense of purpose igniting his passion. He envisioned planning a community meeting where families could discuss their needs around food. He was aware skepticism would loom, but the urgency of their realities motivated him to confront it. As he lay in bed, he mulled over the day's discussions, wrestling with the truth that discomfort often birthed profound change. His connection with Lila served to remind him that genuine collaboration was rooted in listening. The moment of reckoning, however, lurked ahead, waiting to test the very integrity of his newfound mission. Just how relentless would the pushback be? And would he have the courage to stand firm? With each question tied to a growing sense of vulnerability, he fell into an uneasy sleep, wondering what challenges awaited in the bright light of the next day. The morning light streamed through Mark's window, illuminating the abyss of uncertainty that still held him captive. Sleep had evaded him, the weight of his aspirations clashed violently with the realities he had unearthed. Risks loomed ahead, not just for himself but for the children who had innocently shared their truths. Determined to begin their work, Mark contacted Ms. Darnell, proposing a brainstorming session for the ideas generated between him and Lila. He wanted it to be more than just a meeting, it had to be something that resonated with the parents. He reached for his notepad, its pages filled with ideas and questions that swirled in his head. They needed to capture hearts and minds, to build a sense of community that acknowledged the struggles parents faced daily. Mark was aware of the myriad of sensitive issues the families dealt with: pride, shame, desperation. He wanted to create a space where they could express themselves freely. But how could he foster that openness when he himself felt like an outsider thrust into their struggles? As the day progressed, Mark's determination magnified. He put together an agenda that included time for families to share their experiences around food insecurity, as well as practical solutions they had devised within their own lives. He wanted to position this gathering not as a lecture from him but as a collaborative effort. Even as he sketched the format on paper, doubt crept in: would they truly trust him? Later, he visited the local community center, where many families congregated. Arriving with the intention of feeling out the atmosphere, he observed the conversations and gestures around him. Children played on the cracked pavement while parents huddled in small groups, whispering and expressing concern over absence of food or resources. This reality penetrated Mark's heart, igniting an urgency that became a burning flame. While he reviewed the surroundings, he noticed a father exchanging words with another parent. He cautiously approached, introducing himself and explaining his plan. Skepticism flickered in their expressions, and he felt himself retreating inward. "Why should we trust you?" one father asked directly. Mark took a breath, recognizing this challenge as an opportunity. "Because I care," he said, the weight of the words hanging between them. "I might not share your experiences, but I want to understand. If I can somehow help empower you to tackle some of these issues together, can we start that conversation?" Surprised momentarily by his transparency, the father softened. "Look, we've all been promised things before. It never worked." The honesty was palpable, cutting deeper than Mark anticipated. "I get it, and I can't promise you anything," he said, "except that I'm willing to listen and learn." Mark's intensity heightened as the father studied him, possibly weighing his sincerity against years of disappointment. In the following days, he prepared for the community meeting meticulously, printing flyers and engaging with individuals to spread the word. However, a recurring thought gnawed at him: could he be a catalyst for change without being another empty voice offering solutions? Days turned into restless nights as he wrestled with unsettling questions. If this failed, what repercussions would fall on Lila and the other children? It dawned on him that every decision he made resonated beyond just his intentions. He needed them to see him not as an outsider but as an ally. As the meeting approached, he realized the emotional stakes were higher than he ever predicted. The turnout that night would either forge connections or seriously divide him from the community he hoped to aid. Would they be open to sharing their truths and their struggles, or would he be met with their walls? When the hour arrived, fear settled in his stomach like a lead weight. He stood outside the community center, hand trembling, considering the courage he had to muster. It was a question of authenticity and engagement, and he was about to discover whether he could truly anchor meaningful dialogue. Just then, Lila spotted him from a distance, running with that infectious enthusiasm only a child could possess. In that moment, Mark knew, their trust would not be easily earned. But he was ready to fight for this, for her, for them, and for himself. The question loomed, would they accept him as one of their own, or would he face a reckoning he wasn't prepared for? He straightened his posture, took a deep breath, and stepped inside, ready to confront whatever awaited him. Mark stood at the front of the community center, heart pounding and palms damp with anxiety. The room buzzed with muted chatter, parents exchanging wary glances at the unfamiliar figure who had stepped into their world. This was no polished conference room, this was raw, unfiltered reality, a crucible where expectations clashed with aspirations. He cleared his throat, suddenly feeling every inch of his attire suitable for board meetings but ill-fitting for this gathering. "Thank you for being here," he began, trying to engage the audience with genuine warmth. "I know trust is hard-won. I'm Mark, and I'm here to learn from you." The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on him, some filled with skepticism, others with cautious curiosity. Mark inhaled deeply, recalling the faces of the children he had met in class, faces now urging him to be the advocate he promised he could be. "I want to understand your challenges, not just as statistics but as real experiences. Together, we can address the very issues that weigh on our community. Let us talk about food resources, education, and the barriers you face every day." A woman in the back raised her hand, her tone skeptical. "And why should we believe you're any different? You just show up with promises, what have you really done?" Her challenge felt like a jolt of cold water. "You're right," he acknowledged, his voice steady despite the growing pressure in his chest. "I haven't done anything yet for this community, but that's why I'm here. I want to work alongside you, to ensure that your voices are heard." He glanced at Lila, whose eyes glimmered with hope and determination. He would not disappoint her. "I'm not here to impose solutions. I'm here to ignite a conversation, one where every story matters. Let us create actionable plans together." As parents began to cautiously engage, one father stepped forward. "What do you propose, really? What resources can you offer us?" Mark seized the opportunity. "I want to connect you with local organizations already working to combat food insecurity. We'll host workshops where we can share strategies and experiences." He felt momentum building, the skepticism was slowly giving way to interest. "I can use my resources to facilitate partnerships for after-school programs, tutoring services, and nutritional support. But more importantly, I want your insights on what will work." The discussion began to flourish, an exchange of ideas where voices rose over one another, each tale weaving into a tapestry of shared struggles. He listened intently, jotting down notes, driven by the hope that they could co-create tangible change. Questions flooded the air. How do we ensure every child has access to healthy meals? How can education initiatives support their families? The night unfolded with growing energy as parents shared solutions they implemented from their experiences. Mark facilitated, continually reinforcing his commitment not to dictate terms but to collaborate. He felt how the conversations, once tinged with apprehension, morphed into a pathway of potential. Finally, he noticed the glimmer of light in the room, as shares multiplied, shoulders visibly relaxed, laughter pierced the room punctuating sorrows that had long been suppressed. By the end of the night, it dawned on Mark how much had changed not just in the room, but within himself. Sitting amidst stories of hardship, he discovered not just community needs but a new sense of purpose. He was not merely handing resources, he was becoming an integral part of this fabric woven from resilience and shared aspirations. As the meeting concluded, parents approached him one by one, gratitude transforming skepticism. "Thank you for listening," one mother said, clasping his hand firmly. "It's rare that we feel seen." He absorbed her words, a swell of resolve filling him. Mark realized he had emerged from the shadows of privilege, not erasing his identity, but using it to empower others. With earned trust and a burgeoning determination to dive deeper, he now confronted a future full of possibilities and challenges. Driving home that night, he reflected on the journey that lay ahead. No longer did he feel the weight of privilege as a burden, it became a catalyst for collaboration, a means of lifting others. The transformative effect of the evening surged through him. He had transitioned from observer to a participant ready to dismantle systemic inequities, forging ahead toward a new realm of impact. Mark envisioned extending his outreach, driven by an urgency to build sustainable initiatives. With hands-on partnerships defined by trust, he would foster programs aligned with community needs, making long-lasting changes. Gripped by determination, he whispered into the night. The hesitations were gone. This was only the beginning. Mark felt a profound sense of satisfaction as he realized that true wealth lay not in accumulation but in generosity in spirit. He was prepared to dismantle barriers, layer by layer, with every conversation promising to reveal a deeper understanding. He had finally moved beyond mere acknowledgement, he had crossed into purposeful action. And it wasn't just about helping, it was about listening, learning, and evolving into the man he was meant to be. This was his moment, a thrilling convergence of opportunity. Now, it's your moment, too. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.